Okay, good morning. Welcome to the La Plata Electric Association August board meeting. Thank you for attending. If you would take a moment and please rise. We'd like to start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
I should have closed the door.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So much. Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'd like to go ahead and ask for an approval of the agenda.
So moved by Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have a second? Thank you, Dan. Okay. All in favor? Hold their hands up.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstained? Okay, the agenda is passed as is. We'll go ahead and open the floor for member comments. Graham, why don't you go ahead and give us the usual readout for member comments.
Thank you, John. The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comment pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments should be submitted to the board in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with board policy. Comments from the public will be directed at the entire board, not any individual. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and complaints are available on the cooperative website. Thank you.
Do we have any members wishing to speak? Okay. Looks like there's no member comments today, so let's move on to the next item. Today, number 3, this is consent board items. As usual, if anybody would like to pull anything out of the consent board items, let's go ahead and offer that up now. Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to move to approve the board consent items.
Terrific. Can we get a second?
Rachel seconds.
Sue, thank you. Okay, all in favor of the consent board, hold your hand up. Thank you. All opposed? Abstained? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you for consent items. Let's go ahead and do CEO and staff reports. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And I am not able to get into Director Point for some reason, so Drew's trying to work on it. So he's going to have to share his screen for us.
That is because of our intense cybersecurity.
Yeah, probably kicked me out. Okay. All right, so we'll start on key performance, Drew. Okay, so everything is meeting or exceeding our performance goals, except for our 3 reliability. And we've explained this the past couple months that this is staying yellow. Getting a lot of feedback. Hopefully that's not everybody else. They're yellow because we've had some significant storms with lightning and some outages. So unfortunately, because those are averages, those outages in the last couple of months impact our outages and the averages. Any questions on that? And Jerry's here, or Garrett, and they can add more detail if you'd like. Okay. Any questions on that one? All right, I'm looking at everyone. I'll keep going down. All right, 0 accidents and incidents, so that's good. We did have our first aid and CPR training for over half of our employees, so that was really great. It seems like there's a lot of new information that comes out on CPR, so it's always good to get a refresher, so that's where we're at. As I've mentioned before on the drone inspections, we continue to do a lot of maintenance on those because our new construction and member jobs have slowed down, as we've mentioned before as well. We're able to increase our maintenance. So we've been really pushing it hard to get all of those maintenance items completed. So that includes insulator strings that are broken, broken cross arms, braces, cracked insulators. One thing I would mention that is a little concerning is that we had the crews going out and they were training and also replacing the 46 kV insulator string. And it was after they went up, they knew that there was a problem from the drone, which by the way, we wouldn't have seen without the drone flying over. And as a result, the crews went up because they saw that there was something wrong. Well, they found, and Jerry, you're gonna have to correct me, I can't remember how many insulators were actually shot by someone playing target practice. So I do have the insulator in my room if anyone wants to look at it. But that is concerning for us because that was a 46 kV line and they took out, I don't know, maybe 5 to 6, 4.
Yeah, but they were, each insulator string is comprised of, I believe, 6 individual bells. And so each string, so each phase essentially had to be worked on.
And if you guys can see it, I know this is kind of tough, but so there's the little hole, but it takes out the whole backside. So we did have to report this to the authorities, and they actually sent a nationwide bulletin out to all energy companies across the US. And this is something that they do just to remind people that this continues to happen. And there are ways to do education on this. So that's why we're also hosting, and Hillary, I'm going to have you mention this, the Set Your Sights, which is, I believe, coming out this month, where we're paying for folks to actually go to a gun range so they know where they're at and they get experience and they understand that you can't just use our equipment as targets. Hillary, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's called Scope Your Sights. We've been doing it for many years now, in conjunction with the Durango Gun Club, and it's in October and November. We basically sponsor free, some free hours and free days at the gun club that people can go and scope their sights for free.
Kirsten, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for this. And I think that Set Your Sights is a great idea. When I was first reading this, I was thinking that we thought that people just had bad sights and that's why they were hitting our insulators. And I was like, oh, no. Okay. So I'm glad to hear it. And anything you can do to communicate with that community is fabulous. I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you. I believe Kohler was next.
Yeah, with these insulators are they all within a certain designated area, or are they spread out throughout different areas?
Yeah, this one was all up by just right behind the Sonic up Horse Gulch on the power line right above Horse Gulch. But I think, Jerry, you guys are finding these kind of all over the district in certain areas. So it's not one area in particular.
Yeah, the cracked and broken insulators happen all the time. It's just this case was specifically from 22. Jessica actually, she went and visited the crews and found the casings on the ground. So it was apparent somebody was shooting them up.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So was this reported to, the sheriff's department and police and stuff too?
Yes.
Okay. Did they say anything?
No, I mean, there's not much you can do. And, you can run ballistics, but at that point, it's, you know, it was covered in the soil and stepped on, and so there's not much they can do about it. But the point is that they're aware of it.
Okay. And then my other question on the cybersecurity update.
Yep.
I'm just wondering how that went, and if you can tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give a short presentation during executive session on that. Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, Drew, next page. Okay, so yeah, I think that just wanted to make sure everybody knew that we're making good progress with crossover and tri-state. Dan and I flew down to Denver a couple weeks ago and met with tri-state and crossover staff in a room for a couple hours, and it was really a fantastic meeting, going through all of the transmission constraints on the system and the maps. And just from my perspective, I really learned that we live in a really optimal location because it's not constrained getting power to us in certain areas. It's actually beneficial. So that was great news, and it was good for tri-state transmission staff to meet the crossover staff and really work through these issues together. And then they were kind enough to give us a tour of all their facilities. So if anyone has not toured their facilities, it's very impressive. And I would encourage everybody, if they're in Westminster, to ask, because their control center, their dispatch room, they're top notch. Kirsten?
Tri-state?
Tri-state, yeah.
Is crossover also looking at non-tri-state transmission, or are we pretty much focused on tri-state transmission because we won't have to pay extra for it?
Dan, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, they're looking at all options on the table. And so, you know, they have different partnerships. They're also looking to acquire their own point-to-point transmission paths. So you can acquire those from different companies. If Tri-State owned it, they could directly acquire it from Tri-State, or if Excel owns it, or Excel, any of those guys own it, they can acquire those directly from them. So they're looking at all the options on the table.
Okay, and I know in some of these areas, the line, the queue is really super long. So we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place as far as have they decided on any placement of stuff, or are they waiting for something? Because getting in that queue is going to possibly really slow stuff down.
So we're all waiting on FERC right now on a lot of those things. So they can't, if they put their name in the queue, they have to start paying. Basically, they're paying a fee for every month that it's not being used or using that path. So they want to make sure that everything is lined up and ready to go through before they can really enter the queue. And the queue is for an interconnection study, not necessarily a transmission path. Those are two different things that they look at there.
Okay, next one, Drew. Okay, again, I think Carl has covered this pretty well, and he'll talk about this a little bit, but we had our budget kickoff. Finance team is meeting with the VP, so we're going through those. We had a good FAC meeting, kicking that off. And what we've also decided is everybody should have the KRTA report. So hopefully the board has looked through that. It's great to see. And like I've mentioned before, we try to dribble out key points in every dashboard. And so Carl wanted to highlight this one. Carl, did you want to talk about that one at all? No. Can't hear you, Carl.
There I go. I couldn't find my unmute button because I was on full screen. Yes, so one of the things identified that I was very excited about in the 2021 KRTAs was how our expenses per customer or per member are significantly lower than average, and not just the Colorado average, but the United States average. So shows we are managing our expenses very well.
All right, it looks like Joe had the first question.
Yeah, just a couple things. Going back to the previous slide. In the FERC proceedings, you say that we're working with Poudre Valley and I guess that's San Miguel. How are we cooperating with, the other local co-ops? What are we doing there?
With Poudre and San Miguel or others?
Yeah.
So we've been for probably the past year filing at FERC for the buy down payment, the partial. So that's why we're involved in them, is because they were in the first round of open season on the buy down payment. So we worked with them on finalizing that agreement with Tri-State. So we filed joint filings together.
Okay, so there's really nothing new there then, I guess. Okay.
No. Yeah.
And then just on the short form videos, I think those are great. And so thanks for putting those together. I'm assuming Hillary has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, it'd be nice if we could make some PR hay out of the KRTA stuff. And if we can tell that story somehow, I think it'd be worthwhile, telling folks out there that, our expenses are a lot lower than others throughout the system in the country. So something to think about.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. To maybe Hillary can talk about that in the newsletters that go out. All right, Kirsten.
Yeah, I think we should all do a happy dance for that KRTA. I think that's really great, and yay, yay, yay. I do have a question, Carl, about it. Remind me, please, controllable costs. Is that just power supply, or is that, that's the non-controllable costs. So what are the controllable costs that are included here?
Yeah, that's basically everything but power supply and depreciation.
Good, that's fabulous.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, Drew. Oh, Joe, did you have another question? Oh, right on your picture. I don't know, you should keep it on that one.
I was just looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion survey that's going out. Couple questions. Is that being, got a 72% response? Do you think this is being well received? I worry about this whole woke thing that's pissing a lot of people off, and it seems like this could be fraught in the long run. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about it, and I think we need to be kept up to date on how that's going too. So go ahead.
Yeah, so this is employee led, so it's not a company initiative. This is their decision to do this. They gathered the group, they went out and got the grant. So this is, again, employee led. It's great that they did this. I think that what it showed is that people definitely have an interest, and then people are not interested in pursuing it further. That was also part of the survey. Jerry's on it, and Jerry, I think you've got a couple of the IBEW union folks on it as well, and how the staff, which I'm really proud of, have couched this is that it's diversity of thought. And so we're not getting into the wokeism at all. And because we have folks from the operations side on it, I think it's well balanced, and that's how they started it.
And you said they decided not to go any further.
Well, they'll probably, they have a committee and they're going to keep meeting on what to do. But the majority of the people that were surveyed said, we got it. It's important to us. We're not sure we need additional training basically on it.
Okay. And that includes front office staff, line workers, management, the whole company, everything. Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Yep. Rachel.
Yeah, I think just one note, I'm going chronologically, but taking it back to the KRTAs, I know when we've examined this in the past, part of the reason we were lower is because when you also look at other sections of the KRTA data, we have a smaller staff, if I remember right. Is that correct? than kind of cooperative peers our size. And in past years, you would flag that as just something to watch. Am I tracking accurately in my memories?
Carl, that would be to you.
I don't know, because that may have been a discussion before my time, Rachel, but I think we do run pretty lean, but I don't see that as a problem. I just, for some brief background, I've been talking with my fellow Colorado CFOs are looking at their finance departments, and we run ours fairly leaner than most, but we feel that works. We don't want to have people sitting around on their hands, and I think it's a factor, but I don't see it as problematic.
Great, and that was just gonna be my follow-up question. If we're lean, is it working? And if so, great. Thanks for pointing that out. And then just, I think the second piece, I'm glad to hear, Jessica, as you referenced, diversity is, I think it gets couched in this tiny little bubble, and it's diversity of all things, diversity of educational levels, diversity of economic levels, diversity of our physical abilities, diversity of religious backgrounds. And so I think that it's really cool to hear that the staff kind of went in on this and took the initiative to really explore it. And I think I was curious from something that does fall in this, right, is diversity of linguistic access. And I know for us, right, 9% of our population here in Durango, English is a second language. And so those folks are also our members. And I know we talk about this a lot. Have we made any forward progress on any sort of, like, there's plugins where you can get your websites available in multiple languages? It's literally a drop of the, at least in my website, it's very easy to do. Any forward progress on that piece of things?
Yeah, Hillary, I know you were working on this. So where are we at on that issue?
So our website, you can view it in Spanish. So that is something that we did do. We have it on our radar, other ESL efforts. It's just when we start to look into the amount of things that would have to be translated, even for one campaign, we run up against the limits of our capacity. But we have not forgotten about it. And we are definitely considering that for our campaigns moving forward when it makes sense, based on the content we're pushing.
If it's helpful, there's a group in town that offers free consulting for organizations just to help figure out, like, because it is it's a burden, right? It's a lot, but like to help figure out what are those, based on what community needs are, what are those top issues and items that might make sense. Just knowing we're all resource limited. So I'd be happy to connect you if that'd be of interest.
Yeah, and there's a drop down on our website at the very top, so you can check that out. But it's not just Spanish. I think you can do a lot of languages if you want.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. All right, Tim.
Hey, thanks. Good work on the expense controls. Carl, on the DEI, I think it's, well, I'm impressed that organizationally the staff put together, the employees put together an initiative on this, and I think it's a good thing, a very good thing. I'm curious, however, about a DEI assessment, which I also think is a really good thing, to have a baseline of, okay, where are we? What are these? What's the status? And then, then you can decide where you want to go and what are the key issues. I'm curious about the scope of that assessment and any kind of results that point to things. And it's within the employee base, but there's also a board, there's also the public, like Rachel was just talking about, and so forth. Having some idea as a board member of where we are in that assessment and where the staff feel or the employees feel work needs to be done, and also an awareness by the board of what work needs to be done or not, right? Where are we strong and where are we needing more effort? So I don't know if that's possible, but some ability to see that assessment as well as its scope, I think would be really helpful for, at least for me as a board member. So thanks.
Yeah, we'll work with the consultant and I'm going to circle back with Curtis to see how they did this. And we'll try to get back to the board on it. Because it's an employee survey, I'm not sure what the, sharing it is wise, because then the employees would maybe feel that they couldn't be honest in a survey. But we can pull out main themes, I think, but I want to be very careful about this because 72% is a pretty good number to do the survey. And we had a significant amount of the operations department take it. And I don't want to impact a really delicate situation, I think, as Joe and others have mentioned, but we'll see what we can definitely share.
I guess what I'm reading on this was there's things, assessment and then a survey. If those are the same thing, then yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But if there was an assessment that led to a survey, I'm very curious as a director to understand, what that assessment provides as a baseline.
Sure. Yep.
I don't want to interfere with what survey or staff employees might have provided to inform where they want to go. But I just feel this is an issue in our community. It has been, and LPEA is a leading entity within the community. If we have an assessment around this, I think if it can be shared, it would be really great to understand that and see, because there may be policy things that we have to consider as a result of that. And where do we want to go strategically with this kind of thing? Seems relevant to me as a board director. And so I'm very appreciative of what's going on. And, it sounds like employees are head of the board maybe in this regard, but if we can leverage what has been done in terms of an assessment, that could be very helpful. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll look at this and see what we can share. It was not an external assessment, just to clarify. It was just an internal assessment on our policies and hiring and those kind of things. So I'll work with Graham and Hillary. We'll go back and look at it. But I agree, if it's something that we definitely can share to give you better insight, I think that would be helpful.
It might lead to maybe a board letter or a more strategic assessment of the overall potential and impact that LPEA has in the community as a whole too. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll get back to you. Thank you. Okay. Any other, Drew, I think you can stop sharing because we reached the end. So are there any other questions on the dashboard before we move to Carl's financial discussion? Tim, did you have another one? Or was that?
I just didn't lower my hand. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a place to bring it up, but I see on Facebook, we have a LPEA Energy doing an advertisement stating that La Plata Electric is in search of solar facilities to supply our energy. And I posted on there that LPEA Energy is not La Plata Electric Association. How do we combat that? There's a lot of people bashing LPEA or La Plata.
Graham, do you want to? Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. Graham, do you want to cover that one?
Well, I think Dan and Hillary, I think, have been reaching out to this company directly, right? Previously, I know that we're familiar with this.
It's a rabbit hole, Dan. We have a lot of members who contact us and say, we saw your ad. We say it's not our ad. And there's just a lot of very aggressive solar advertising out there right now that mentions LPEA Energy. The biggest there's one particular local company that uses like a national advertising firm to do all of their Facebook advertising. And they're our biggest offender at this point. And Graham and I were going to work on a cease and desist for that because they're not responding to our attempts at being neighborly with them.
Did I do wrong by commenting on there saying that it was not the same? And
No, in fact, whenever I see those on Facebook, I will comment and I will include a URL to our solar scams article on our website. And because they're utilizing all of the scams in the book, you know, basically saying no upfront costs, you'll make money, you know, payback is a year, you know, we're going to be raising rates every year. I mean, they say all these things that are just blatantly, patently false. So please comment if you guys see these things on Facebook. Please feel free to say that you're a member of the LPEA board. This is absolutely untrue. Direct them to our solar section for more information.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Joe.
Yeah, Hillary, could you send us just a boilerplate couple of sentences? Because I'm seeing those all the time too. And then we can just cut and paste. That would be helpful. Thanks.
Can do.
Okay, there's no other questions. I'll have Carl take over the financial update.
Thanks, Jessica. I'll share my screen real quick. Okay, everyone seeing that okay? Okay, so July financials. Board meeting July 20th. Oh, that's wrong. It's August. Sorry about that. Probably no one would have noticed. What am I doing? So we met all of our financial goals in July quite comfortably. Equity went down as capital credits are retired. Margin still very healthy. So all of our goals were comfortably met. So let's look at some of the highlights. Do we want to do questions now, or shall I go through and finish? So I see Kirsten had her hand up.
I would take questions on each page.
Sure. Okay. Let me go back. Kirsten.
Yeah, I'm correcting your correction. I think that is the financial results for July 2022.
Oh, okay. No, I'm saying it's for the board meeting in July. There's a little bit at the bottom that probably nobody
Yeah, but it
noticed.
says at the bottom.
Board meeting July 20th.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I'll accept your correction.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's the toughest question I'm going to get. I'm very happy with that. So highlights. One of the things we spoke about this in more detail at the FAC is that we had pretty robust sales in July, but they didn't really translate into margins for us, and this was kind of a imperfect storm, if you like, in that we had pretty significant demand in our residential and commercial rate classes, which drove up our bill from Tri-State. But because those rate classes aren't really set up to recover a lot of demand, that's more in the industrial space, we had our cost of power was higher proportionately than our revenue. So although our sales were pretty robust, especially in the industrial sphere, which doesn't generate huge margins, our gross margin, you'll notice, was below forecast for the month by around $176,000. So we offset that with lower operating costs. Operating costs, the savings were principally in admin and general, where we have our provision for legal fees, which we didn't spend very much of this month. I think it was minimal in July. But we did have some higher costs up in Jerry, Garrett, and Dan's world. We had some, Jessica pointed it out going through the dashboard. There's less construction and more maintenance. Maintenance hits the income statement. Construction is more likely to hit the balance sheet. We're also ramping up our fire mitigation all the time. And I would anticipate that those top lines of expense in our income statement will be higher than forecast, basically until winter, when we're somewhat limited in what we can do. So operating margins are very close to what we forecast. We're actually slightly under $24,000. So we're pretty tight. Gross margin slightly under, operating costs also under forecast. So we kind of end up where we thought we would, but by a circuitous route, as it were. So pretty encouraging July. It's good to see those costs coming through in the operations maintenance world. It's when you're focusing your efforts and then you see your income statement following that, that's always good to see. So Ted, do you have a question?
Yeah, Carl, I mean, more of a commentary. It was nice for me when we dug in a little bit more detail in the Finance and Audit Committee to understand in a little more depth what you were describing about the increased use from sort of residential and light commercial. And the interesting thing to me, and I think I'm pointing it out because hopefully it will be interesting to everybody, was not so much the increased use, but the increased use during peak times, and that our rate system isn't really designed to at least not at a one-to-one level recover that peak charge that we get from Tri-State, even though we have a peak energy charge. It's important, I think, for all of us to recognize and realize that that's not, even though it's a big number, it looks like a big number on your bill. It's a change in how we build over the course of a relatively long period of time. But it's not enough, right? Or I mean, maybe it's enough, but it's not a one-to-one coverage. And so when we do have something unusual, random, with that peak energy use, LPEA does take a hit on that. And so it's something to think about. It's not just a lot of people using energy, it's a lot of people using energy at a time where that energy costs LPEA a lot of money. So that's just my commentary coming out of the fact meeting.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Ted. Thanks. Kirsten?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Ted. It raises a question for me about, I know that I tell our members that, hey, check out time of use because frequently it will be less expensive for you over the long term. I'm interested to know if time of use for residential or for the commercial helps us more. I mean, I've been telling our members it's going to help them. Can you tell me if and Dan, this is probably your bailiwick, does it help LPEA more, and that's it.
Kirsten, I would say on the scale of things, it is certainly better than an energy only structure to a rate. It lies somewhere in the middle of a demand rate and an energy only rate. It gets us, I'll say, halfway there. Covers some things, but theoretically with time of use, somebody could be off peak the majority of the month, except for the one day that was the peak. They saved money, we didn't. But if it happens every day, then it smooths out. A lot of things to consider on that, but just the takeaway is it's halfway there.
Okay, when you say halfway there, so my question was kind of comparing and contrasting the demand charge that we put on the last rate change for residential, and comparing and contrasting that to time of use. So I tell members, hey, use time of use, it's better, or call LPEA, they'll run it through you, they'll be able to tell you if time of use is better. My question is, when we look at that, am I doing harm to LPEA to tell them, hey, go check out time of use, or is it better for them and for us also?
Not doing harm, for sure. That's a good thing. So it's they both send across that behavioral message that we're trying to get to.
Okay, and we're trying to kind of figure out a stronger message,
Yeah.
perhaps.
There's things that could absolutely be better, and they could always be better, but that we keep working towards it. Thank you.
Okay, I think I don't see any other hands, so thank you very much, guys.
Okay, John, now on the schedule, we are going to kick it over to Dan to give a presentation on the Sunnyside, and then there's a certain amount of slides that we are going to have to go through in public session, and then we're going to have to move to executive session during part of it. Any questions on that? And so hopefully everybody has their executive session link and ready to go. Holly, did you have a question?
Go ahead, please.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, kind of that ended quickly, Carl's section. I just wanted to point out that we had 4 new on-bill financing accounts. And so I called up the banker to find out what people are investing in, because I'm curious. And it was 3 solar installs, as well as 10,000 on energy efficiency measures. And so in that same email, the banker also let me know that they just received a grant for helping finance for lower income residents some of these measures. And so he wanted me to, well, he wanted to know if LPEA would, help get that messaging out. So that's something that just transpired.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning, everybody. Going to go through our Sunnyside RFP. As you know, we've been very excited about the project. I particularly have been excited because I've hopefully been watching this property finally became available to us, and able to put something out there we thought has been a great opportunity for us for a while here. So as you know, we'll let me jump to the agenda here. So we're going to go through a public session here, as Jessica mentioned, cover a little bit of background, the RFP itself, and then what we were actually considering during the evaluation. Then we'll jump into an executive session to review some of the details on that evaluation, and then come back to public session where we can announce a winning proposal here. And this objective today is to preview for the board and the public the entity that LPEA will enter into negotiations with for a PPA for the Sunnyside solar project here. So let's jump into some of this background information and what got us here. It started with back in December of 2019 when the Tri-State Board approved Policy 119, which allowed for community solar gardens. That gave us a little bit of headroom, a little bit of leeway. I'll get into exactly how much that was here in a little bit. Then in February of 22, that's when we were actually able to purchase the 55 acres at the Sunnyside substation. We did send out a request for proposals in May of this year. We issued that to find a solar developer, and those proposals were due back to us in June. And that's sort of the road that we went down here. And so let's talk about these submittals that we did receive. We had some informational meetings, had a lot of interest generated. We did ultimately receive 5 proposals. There was 1 proposal that was sent to us, and it didn't have the application fee. That one was disqualified. It was a non-local proposal. Then LPEA formed a cross-functional team comprised of people from my group, the engineering group, the financing group, to review these. That ultimately ended in 3 finalists being selected that all had an operational presence in Durango. And you may recognize some of these companies. The companies that made the list, that made the cut to the finalist, were Calcom Energy, Canisto Companies, and Limitless Solar. After that, we invited them all into the office and spent a couple hours with each one, asking them questions, really understanding the details, trying to make sure that we were doing apples to apples comparisons, and just become familiar with the companies that made this short list here. Then the items that we were really digging into, actually, this is the RFP parameters. So this is, as part of the RFP, here are the kind of things that we were asking for. And it was to do a turnkey system. In other words, they're doing the engineering, procuring everything, constructing everything of a tracking system that could generate, and this is a parameter of that policy 115, but 4.6 million kilowatt hours annually. What that equates to is power that can power about 600 homes. It's about 2 megawatts. Then we were looking for proposals in the form of a PPA, a 20-year PPA. You know, interestingly enough, with the recent passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, there might be some other options for us to explore here, but certainly right now we're focused on the PPA. Then under that model, the developer would own and maintain the system for the duration of the term. Then one key thing we wanted was LPEA to have the option at any point and have a predetermined numbers to know, okay, after each year, what would it be if LPEA wanted to outright purchase this system? So that was something that we'll be working in as well. Then the other real fascinating component about this RFP was we're trying to make this be something that can also enable Fort Lewis College's solar park. It's a separate system. What we're going out for the bids here is just a 2 megawatt system for LPEA, but we're encouraging bidders to support and work with FLC in this effort here. Then lastly, and I think most importantly, was we really encouraged the incorporation of local talent. That was a high part of our evaluation. We wanted somebody here locally that we could work with here, and that's frankly why we ended up with 3 finalists being all local representation here in Durango. Then the key items of consideration the items of consideration here that we were looking at. Kirsten, I see you have your hand up here. What was your question there?
Yeah, it's a quick question about that FLC encouraging participation in that. Is that going to go in the evaluation of the RFPs? Does that become a tiebreaker, or is it?
No, it's just something that they just need to know ahead of time that, hey, you're putting a bid towards us. We're evaluating that, but this is part of FLC. We're expecting you to work with FLC. Give us a proposal on the kind of things that you could work with them on that sort of thing. But the primary thing that this evaluation is being done on is the primary 2 megawatt array. Then the considerations, of course, the PPA pricing, a large part of it. Does the company have the resources to build? Do they have financial backing? That local representation element I was mentioning. What is their experience with community solar? Can they deliver on what we're asking them to do here? And a very important aspect is that also the engineering and design. Are systems properly grounded? Do you have a good inverter to go with the system? Do you know how to operate it? Can you support the system you're delivering to us? So those are the key evaluation considerations that we will be covering with you here in executive session. So this would be the time at which, if you have any other things to mention in public, now would be the time to do so. Otherwise, we'll move into executive session and we can go through some of the specifics here. And for any of our members that are online looking for, us coming back to public session, I only expect this to take maybe 15 minutes or so in executive session, and we should be back. Joe?
Yeah, Dan, just kind of a math question. So if 2 megawatts can generate enough power for 600 homes, is it just if you did 4 megawatts, would that be 1,200 homes, or is it more exponential?
No, you've got it, and that's based on the homes here in Durango. You might hear different numbers from Excel Energy or other co-ops that have more air conditioning load or more heating load or something along those lines. That's catered to us.
Great, thanks.
Colin?
Yeah, I know that board policy 119 is being challenged at FERC. So what happens with the conclusion on that? Can that harm what we're doing here with this RFP?
Yeah, so what the assumption we're under here is worst case is we can do what we want to do. The variables that are being challenged are, could the system be bigger even than what we're looking at here? That's one of them. And then the add back is the other. And I'm assuming that there will be an add back at this point. So we're running numbers based on worst case on however that might turn out.
Can you explain what an add back is? I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's one of the items that's being contested right now. What's being proposed in policy 119 is that you can avoid transmission charges. That's not consistent with policy 115, and that's one of the things being challenged. So if anything, maybe the economics are a little rosier than what we're projecting here, but it's really a minor element, the element that's being challenged there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to stop my share and
hang on. Everybody take a minute, make sure you got your executive session link ready to go.
It's hard to hear you, John. I think you're too far from your microphone.
Really?
But it's for me. Thanks.
Okay,
I would agree.
just double check to make sure you have your executive session link. Dan, did
Dan's
you
got
have
a
a comment?
question.
You're on mute, but Dan.
I can't find mine. I sent emails, but I haven't got a response back yet.
Okay, Drew, can you, or Janelle, can you please send
Yep.
Dan his executive session link,
Yep,
please?
we'll get you set then.
Do we
Thank
need a motion to go into executive session here?
Yeah, we do, and a 2/3 vote.
Okay, so moved to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All abstained? Okay, we will see you on the other side.
See you over there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and so we can complete this public session in regards to the Sunnyside solar proposal. Okay. Yeah, we had a good executive session, discussed through the various evaluation of the three entities that submitted proposals to us. And just wanted to inform the public here on some of the topics we discussed in executive session that certainly could be public here, which was in regards to due diligence on La Plata Electric did evaluate thoroughly, all of these entities. We invited them in, had some good interviews. One of the questions that was also asked out there were about water rights, and that was asked in executive session, but definitely public knowledge. Use of water rights. LPEA does have water rights on the property. And can that water be used for construction? That's something we'll talk with the winning bidder on, and work through those details for sure. But it will ultimately be the developer's responsibility to procure any water necessary for construction, either for keeping the dust down or for compaction or anything. And there was also wanted to make public some of the public review, public comment, permitting type of things that were going on with this project as well. And there will definitely be county permitting required for the installation of a project such as this. And we will be working with the developer to through that portion of it. We want to make sure LPEA keeps its name reputable as well, and make sure we're good neighbors and talk to all the community members that are directly involved with this. And so without any further delay, I'll show you our next steps here, which will be to negotiate a purchase power agreement with Canisto Companies. That was the developer we selected through our RFP process here. And then what we'll do is, after we figure out the PPA, we'll be bringing that back to the board of directors for approval, hopefully in the next coming months here, as soon as we can. And then LPEA will then continue to go into a next phase of this, as you know, after this construction starts going on, which would be, you know, hey, how can we craft a community solar program specific to this project here? And we'll be engaging our board of directors on that kind of process as well. So, John, I believe that is the. Oh, and Kirsten, did you have something else to add to the?
Yeah, I know I'm between now and break, but the really psyched about this. Just want to kind of raise the hand over in Archuleta County. Would love to have a community solar project over there.
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, Kirsten, thank you for keeping this. We are looking as well, so we appreciate that. And actually, well, we can talk about this later, but we are looking for some good end of the line storage, battery storage potentials in that area where our voltage issues are present. So. Okay, John, I think if there's no questions, that concluded that presentation. So yes, just to reiterate next steps, we will be working on the final RFP or the purchase power agreement contract and bring it to the board for approval in the future.
Terrific. Well, having gotten to see some of the RFP process on the early end and seeing the end here, I definitely wanted to take a moment just to sort of recognize Dan and say thank you.
Can't hear you, John.
Volume, John.
How's that?
Yay.
All right. So thank you. So having seen at the beginning of this process and at the end of the process, and then seeing this presentation at the end, I wanted to definitely take a moment to recognize Dan and the rest of the team and to say thank you for certainly from my perspective, at least, an incredibly professional and well-conducted RFP process. Thought it was really well done and represented LPEA in the finest form. So thank you for that. So, Bob, did you have a comment?
Just quickly, and we'll come back to later. I just wanted to ask Jessica sometime later today, say more about end of the line storage and voltage control issues, what we're looking for there, whenever it's appropriate today.
Sure, we'll do.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great, Joe.
Dan, could you just mention the timeline on this so folks in the audience know?
Yeah, what we really like when we had in the RFP and what was proposed in the construction schedules was completion of the project this or the summer of 23. So looking for that June, July type of time frame to have something up and running there. You know, barring any supply chain type of things, which it's hard to pin down, but that's the target.
Cool. Okay, last call for Dan. All right, 10-minute break. We will see you at 10:47. Thank you. All right, back in business. Okay, so we have a couple of board action agenda items. Let's start with the Finance and Audit Committee update.
Okay, and there really isn't a whole lot to talk about other than what Carl has already covered. We had not received any of the information from Tri-State when the FAC met last week. So the update that Carl gave this morning is pretty much what the FAC heard last week. I would like to encourage everyone, as Kirsten said earlier, to read the KRTA. It gives us a wealth of information, not only statewide, but how we compare with our other co-ops in the state and on a national level. to some extent. So it is in our Google Drive, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at that. We did really well this year, and I'd like to commend staff on our results. So that's all I have from the FAC, unless there's questions. And I don't see any hands raised from my end. So I think it's back to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's been some back and forth on the subject of venue selection. So I think we wanted to have a public discussion about it. Kirsten, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So my questions were about how we decide whether we're going to be on site or not. Is there someplace we can look to see, okay, CDC says this, so we're good to go? And I'd just like to know what the process is so that we have some continuity or someplace to look. Thank you.
Okay, so is that good?
That
Go ahead,
was
please.
it. I've just been asking for what is the process, and I'd like to know what the process is. So Jessica, it's your building, and you and John set the agenda. So just let me know, please, what the process is. Thank you.
Sure. So we follow the CDC and then the San Juan Basin Health Guidelines. And so during COVID, that's what we adhere to. So we don't go beyond that unless there's a circumstance that would occur, like let's say San Juan Basin Health puts us in a medium phase and doesn't require masking or people to be out of the office, but we actually have a lot of staff sick. I think what we would want to do is that as a leadership team, we come together. We did often during COVID, and our supervisors, and made the call whether we should be in the office or not. And we have to be somewhat flexible due to circumstances, but our primary goal at this company, as you all know, is safety. So if we can do our jobs the most safe way possible, but also meet the expectations of the company, which is providing the reliable power, then we'll try to, as a staff, make the right call in regards to should we be in person or should we be virtual. So I hope that helps. I mean, I wish I could give you like an exact guide or methodology for this, but we do follow CDC and San Juan Basin Health, but we also take it into consideration our own company and the needs that we specifically have.
So is there a default, like we have it in-house unless something comes up?
Are you talking about the board meeting?
The board meeting, yeah. Now I'm talking about, so I understand what you use to decide whether your building is open or not, and that's very helpful because we obviously can't meet if the building is not open. My question is, and then this is to both John and Jessica, is there a default of that we're going to try to meet online unless we can't, or we're going to try to meet in person unless we can't?
So John, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, let me, I will weigh in on that. Why don't we go ahead and hear what Ted has to say and get a couple other questions on the table, and then let's just try to tackle it all at once. Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, yeah, I'll tune in, and it's not an answer to any of those questions, but in our sort of board discussion, it came up that one of our new bylaw changes talking about attendance essentially and potential of virtual attendance was an approved change to the bylaws, but it does sort of mandate that the board will come up with a policy sort of dictating how that works. So something in more detail, more granular than what we have in our bylaws. And I just wanted to confirm that the policy committee is aware of that, and we intend to sort of tackle that requirement to put together a board policy that that does clarify that bylaw. And I apologize for not spitting out bylaw numbers and stuff like that, but that will be in our next agenda, and I can say that we're trying to pick a date before our next board meeting to have a committee on policy meeting, and that will be one of our agenda topics.
Great. Okay, so go ahead, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You know, I feel this is a decision that goes along with the agenda, and the board president and CEO pull that agenda together. I think we discussed that at the last board meeting, and that was seemed like a general agreement by the board. I think safety is really important. We talk about this all the time in terms of safety around our electrical system and so forth, for customers, members, staff, etc. You know, I think I would always err on the side of safety in regards to gathering people together in a group that's fairly large during a period of high transmission rates of COVID and other things. And I'm kind of okay with the process at the moment, whereby we have the ability to stay virtual and safe when it is appropriate. And I'm not sure I feel qualified to make that call, but I do appreciate the aspect of safety that's embodied in it at this point. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks for weighing in on that. So so let me preface this by saying it's not Jessica and John. It's the CEO and the board president, and I'm sitting in that chair for a bit longer, but next year it'll just as likely to be someone else. We exchanged a fair amount of email to try to give people a way to communicate their opinion, and two messages came back fairly clearly. The majority, but not 100%, weighed in to say that they felt echoing what Tim said, which is really should be the CEO and board president's decision, as venue is closely tied to agenda. There were a number of people weighed in and were clear that should not be a personal preference, and that should be take into consideration everybody's desire and everybody's preferences, and try to speak with one voice, and if you're choosing one thing over the other, virtual versus in person, at least try to provide some reasoning for that. But that ultimately the decision should rest on the subjective decision, or on the decision of the CEO and the board president. That was the message that I took away. I believe everybody was CC'd on all communication. So if you took away a different message from that, this would certainly be the forum to weigh in on that. It is hearing that voice clearly, hearing that message clearly, I do think it's appropriate to start balancing in person and virtual. I do. And as such, after some discussion with Jessica, her and I felt that the next stage from going from 100% virtual is to go to at least to go once a quarter in person, starting in October. So we have a little timing issue on September, otherwise we do it next month. But we will do October, be in person, and each fiscal quarter we will do in person. TBD where that is. I personally think we should mix it up a little. If we're going to do in person, we should all go out to Pagosa, represent there, Bayfield, represent there, go to the different parts of the community. But that's my personal opinion, and we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But I did hear you loud and clear. We should be doing in person where we can. And right now we think once a quarter is an appropriate cadence. That may change as the health and safety issues evolve over the course of the next 12 months. But given that point of view, I think that's where we landed. So open to conversation and feedback on that matter, because I want you guys all to be, if not happy with that choice, satisfied with that choice. And if you feel strongly otherwise, this should be the forum to speak up. So Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what are the current guidelines from CDC and San Juan?
Graham, I think that there's none right now. There's no.
Yeah, I just checked. We are currently in low transmission under CDC. I think that just changed recently. I mean, like in the time frame from July, I don't know, can maybe speak from personal experience. I know there was a lot of transmission last month because I had my own personal exposures. So, as of 5 minutes ago, when I checked the CDC website, we're at low transmission in La Plata County. I didn't check Archuleta County, but I assume it's similar.
And that to me, again, to speak sort of, again, that is one of the considerations. There are others. We are all, long before COVID, are aware that there is such a thing as a sick building. There's definitely situations where you just get, for whatever reason, your employee team gets sick. There's just more people out. You know, there's situations why you should take that into account. You know, there are other advantages to being virtual. It provides, allows people to attend virtually. It allows people to participate at different levels. You know, not everybody communicates in the same ways. There is value to virtual meetings above and beyond just COVID related matters. I think that those are part of the considerations. Net, you know, there are people who work full time. It allows, you know, those people to, you know, be on board and be on board calls, you know, if they're on standby for their own, you know, in their own professional capacities. I am certainly one of those people. I know that there are others on the board as well. I won't speak for them. So to me, it's a balancing act. And I think once a quarter face to face, you know, basically one in person, 2 virtual. I think that's a cadence that could work. And if it doesn't, and we're 6 months in, let's revisit it. Dan, go ahead. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I agree. We need to do some face to face, because I think there's some directors that's only seen you once, John, face to face. And that was at the annual meeting.
You may not like what you see, but
anyway,
but your point is well taken.
And as far as you're thinking that having meetings different places, there's not very many places set up to do our recordings and all of that stuff during the meetings. So I think LPEA is headquartered in Durango, and that's where we need to have those meetings. We've tried going to Pagosa, and the facilities over there hasn't been very conducive. It puts us in a small room and very compacted. So I don't know if there's other venues over there, places to have them, but the availability of internet and stuff to do the recordings is something to take into consideration.
Fair enough. And if that proves to be the case, obviously, then, you know, I don't want to create a substandard meeting environment. But let's figure that out. And I certainly didn't want to commit to doing any of that now. What I think we should commit to now is one meeting in person starting in October, and then one in-person meeting per quarter. You know, as the situation evolves. Joe.
And Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a new system that would allow kind of a hybrid attendance, right? You could attend or not attend. You could be virtual and in person. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
think
so if
let's
family matters,
remember that and take advantage of that too.
agreed, and they're pretty cool systems, and we'll definitely run it in October, and people can have a feel for it, and see how that feels, both as an individual and as you're representing your constituents. So Sue, go ahead.
Righty, thanks. You know, in listening to all of this conversation, the one thing that has been mentioned to me by our members is that it's kind of a cop-out for us not to be back in person unless there's a real reason not to be. And so even the proposal to have it quarterly in person, to me, seems again kind of like a cop-out. And I'm not against the virtual meetings if we need to have them this way. It does allow people to attend from places they can't attend if you're in person. But it's also maybe, well, I know it's not as good for our members to be able to attend. I've heard people say that, you know, the recordings are bad. They can't get into our system to attend the meetings online. And so I think we have some other issues with the online version of our meetings that we may not all be hearing about. But I'm not sure I like the idea of placing a meeting in person quarterly. I would go back to maybe Tim's comments that if CDC allows it, we don't have a real reason to not have them in person, that maybe we should go that route versus remote twice a quarter and once in person. So just my 2 cents there.
Fair enough. And thank you for that. Rachel, go ahead.
Great. I'd be curious to hear what like a cop out, like what does that mean? I know what that term means, but I'm trying to figure out what members are kind of what their concern is there. And
Well,
was it what you were referencing later about for those members who can attend, they prefer to attend?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the that are telling me that they think it's a cop out for us is because in their minds, unless we have a solid reason to not be in person, we should be in that boardroom representing our members. And I'm not, you know, I'm just relaying information. My opinion, my personal opinion has already been expressed via the emails, but I think our members feel like if we can be in person, we should be there, and they as members should have the opportunity to be there in person as well. So that's kind of the feedback I have been getting.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, and I think I do agree, some in meeting in person, very much in favor of. And I also, we've talked about this back in the day, but really like the idea, if it's feasible, to do some popping around the territory, just for, so yeah, so if you're way out yonder in Marble, you actually can attend a meeting, don't have to drive an hour and a half. So I love that we will have hybrid, because that is access hopefully for most. I love that there will be some in-person meetings, and if it's not too incredibly burdensome, it'd be great to explore alternative locations.
Okay. Kirsten.
Yeah, so when we talk about hybrid, is there an opportunity for the in-person meetings, although we're all going to try to be there? If we can't be there, can we join hybrid? Or is that no, this is an on-person one?
My strongly held view is that if you can attend a meeting, even by virtual, that all members should attend meetings whenever possible, period. And so if for whatever reason you are unable to attend in person at an in-person meeting and you are able to dial in, you should dial in. There's no situation in which it's appropriate for a board member to intentionally bow out if they're able to participate.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for the bowing out more as I was looking for, I happen to be out of town for the month of October. So
yeah,
I can't go
yes,
to our first in person. So
yeah.
Okay, and then my second point, and Ted, this probably goes towards your policy, is when we first started posing that bylaw, because we needed to change the bylaw so that we could have virtual or attendance or as long as you can hear somebody and they can be heard, I believe is what we came up with the bylaw. When we first started posing that, we did it. We included language that it would be the exception, that, you know, it's supposed to be attendance, but you can dial in, you know, up to twice a year. And I think very wisely, we got away from that because, you know, who knows, twice a year, 10 times a year, what are we going to really need? So I think it was wise that we got away from that in the bylaw. But what it suggests to me is that the default, the normal is in person, and that the decision to go virtual is not, or at least that has been the normal. And I guess why I'm asking, well, what is the default is, if we said, okay, let's have a meeting, what does everybody see in their mind? Does everybody see in their mind, okay, we're going to get on the phone, or does everybody see in their mind, oh, I got to figure out how to get to Durango? And I'd like everybody to weigh in on this. What I understand who has the right and the responsibility to override the default. I'm just trying to understand, what is the default? You know, we had a meeting.
I think, Kirsten, I think that question was asked and answered, and the answer was, and it was all done in the communications were in email, and 8 people weighed in and said the default is whatever the CEO and the board president decided is. That is the default.
The question about the default came up after you had asked the question, and since that wasn't in public meeting, we need to probably discuss it again. You had asked the question about who makes the decision, and then after that, I raised the question of, well, is there a fallback? Well, whether we call it the default or the fallback. So, for instance, last week or 2 weeks ago, CREA was here and we had a public meeting, and there were a lot of people in that room over there. And yet now we're not able to be there because of safety concerns. I mean, I don't understand what the fallback is. And then I get that you guys need to get to make the decision. I think I heard from I think I remember reading in the emails that there were a lot of people who had said yes, and we want to have input to that. So I'm asking for that input. I haven't heard from a lot of folks here. And if I'm the only one who wants to meet in person, great. I've been teleworking since 1998. I'll continue teleworking. I just need to understand. Thank you.
Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, just kind of maybe a helpful point of clarification around sort of understanding expectations. So, you know, as this is probably going to, you know, some of this is going to go through policy committee. I've been looking through, you know, what we currently do, and I say I, meaning Graham's been helping me tremendously in that. But, you know, one thing we have coming up that we can expect is that we do, and I can't remember exactly what month, I'm guessing probably December, we identify the dates for the board meetings for the next year. And I think one thing that we might be able to do is sort of identify the expected venue at that time. So at that, I'm not weighing in on whether that's 100% in person, you know, 25%, blah, blah, blah. Just that will help with our expectations. You know, if we get to that point and we come up with a list that then gets published, it more or less solves the expectation problem. It may not resolve individual desires or how, how different people want, the meetings to come about. So that's probably going to happen. And kind of back to members and what they want, what's the best thing for our members as it relates to us holding board meetings. I just want to be really careful. Everybody knows there's this won't come across exactly the right way, but there's a squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of theory. And because a few board members have input, that doesn't mean it represents the entire membership. And so we need to be very careful, when someone calls you up or me up or anybody else and has input, that really is just one person having input. And, I'm not sure what the best way to determine the overall desire of the membership other than just that's us. We represent that membership, and so we should be bringing that forward and doing our best as representatives in that case to do what's best for the whole membership, and that may not be the individual comments that you hear. That's all. Thanks.
There are currently two public members dialed into this virtual meeting right now. Is that correct? Give or take? It could be off by 50% out of 65,000.
Well, there were 5 before, but yeah, there's 2 now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
just to clarify, 2 of those were our employees. And the other one was the, we have them, they sometimes attend, and then the other one was the developer. So it is truly only 2 members.
Okay. Which is fine, which is great. It's their right to attend, and it's everybody else, it's other people's right to not attend. So, we welcome public participation at every level. So Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. It's an interesting discussion, and I don't know that I have a strong opinion yet. I would just ask us though to ponder the question of outcome. To me, that's kind of what I try and find some evidence of outcome in making a decision, and I'm very pleasantly surprised at the outcome of the last almost 3 years of virtual meetings. We've gotten tremendous amount of work done. We've done it more and more efficiently over time, that we have made some great progress. We brought on new board members that hadn't been part of the co-op and somehow have integrated. I personally feel a much stronger sense of trust amongst the board members than at the beginning of the pandemic. From my standpoint, outcome has been good. Would it be better in person? I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't think we should. I'm not sure if we're creating a problem or solving a problem by insisting one way or another when we have essentially come up with some very good outcomes as a result. Well, maybe not as a result, but despite the limitations of virtual meetings. So, and maybe that's patting ourselves on the back a little too much, but, and I would be interested to get some more objective information from our members about what they feel it might be the best route as well. So again, that's not advocating for one or another. I'm just pointing out from my perspective, outcome has been good. I'm interested in what other people might say. And is there a way to measure that over time so that we could have a little more evidence-based decision around the venue of our meetings? So thank you.
Here. So this is a discussion, just a quick time check. We are going to cut this conversation off at 11:30 when Matt dials in, if we don't wrap it up before then. But I didn't want to let that sneak up on you. Joe, excuse me. Joe ahead, go ahead, Joe.
I've been called worse. No, I agree with Tim there on the outcomes for sure. I must say, I do miss kind of the interactions we have at breaks and, questions I have for people just to kind of see what they're thinking about this and that. I miss that aspect of it. I don't know that I need to see everybody every month to do that. You know, I like the quarterly, and I just hope we'll keep revisiting this, I guess, because I think there is value in getting to know each other, like we saw in that little get together after the last meeting was very helpful. Got to talk to John and people I've never talked to. So it's a tough question, but I think we shouldn't forget the high touch aspect of some of this.
Okay, thank you for that. Kohler, go ahead.
So at Tri-State, we've been doing a mix going on for probably a year, maybe a little bit over a year, where once a quarter we go virtual, the other times we go in person. There's a tremendous money savings for Tri-State, and that's a little bit different aspect than what would happen at LPEA. But I would encourage as much as we can to try to do in person, because I think there's a lot of sidebar conversations and stuff you have with staff as well as fellow directors that are really, really powerful, and you kind of get a better feel and you get a better idea of maybe somebody that thinks differently than what you do yourself. One question I do have is, I know these are recorded, and hopefully when we go in person, we still record those meetings as well. Is there pretty strong viewership of those recordings? Can we tell, or is it not?
Kohler, we can find out. We do know that this venue is easier for members to call in and listen versus when we go in person, it almost precludes a lot of people from calling in because it's more difficult to hear. So there is a difference.
And I would think that Zoom for the member seems like a more powerful tool than in person for sure, because you can also get body language and a few other things going. So I think that's good. It would be good to know if many people are taking advantage of it. I know in the past what we've had is just audio recordings. And that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough to find what you're trying to do. But I also, and just to throw this out, in the minutes now, we record the time of all the different events. And that's really powerful to help us kind of guide a member to find out what we're doing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so last call on this subject before we push on. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm glad to hear us say we'll meet at least quarterly in person. I think we're, lots of pros and cons we can say about all this, but we are probably the last board or public entity that I'm aware of that has every single meeting virtually. I mean, whether it's commissioners or town councils or everything. So it has felt a little strange to me that we didn't get around to saying let's meet sometime or other. Because I would say that it's just, I think it's easier to engage. It's a more, if it matters, it's a more enjoyable experience to be on a board where you actually see some people now and then. And if it's, I think it's indicative of something, I'm not totally sure, but we used to have 15 or 20 people come to our meeting, and now even though it's so supposedly easier, we only have 1 or 2 attend virtually. Now, I do think a lot of that is we got over the hump on a whole bunch of controversial issues, but the data on people attending wouldn't say that members are really actually more engaged because it's easier. So I think that's kind of a wash on what that means, but public management of a public entity says something about doing some of it in public live. So I'm in favor of moving that direction. Once a quarter's fine. It may well be that every other time is live, but I think we're a little, I think we're a little slow getting around to saying maybe we could have a live meeting. So I'm glad to see we're doing that. I also I don't want to, I hope we don't push it to a vote that we codify even further who gets to decide. I think this is a collective body that decides, deferring to the CEO and the president to make that call. But I don't want to feel like I'm the kid in the back seat where my parents are saying we're going and just be quiet. I think we are collectively should be deciding that as reasonable, intelligent adults that decide all kinds of other things in our life for other public entities as well. So my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so to wrap this up, number one, at this moment in time, there seems to be enough consensus that it is the president and the board's decision, and it is venue and agenda that they go together for the time being, and that strong feedback to take people's input as part of that decision. Strong feedback that there should be some portion of this in person, and the next action items are in response to that is number one, yes, we will be doing in-person board meetings, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. See how that feels, and if it's still not feeling balanced, then we will revisit the subject. And additionally, and I think, and this is sort of keying off of Tim's comment, that let's try to be outcome focused and objective focus, since there's a lot of comments also around, are we seeing active member participation? Is this a squeaky wheel? Would people more or less come? We will run down some of the stats around online participation, so that at least you can see some actual concrete numbers around the subject, which may help guide and instruct the conversation going forward. And let's just continue to be flexible until we find a balance that works for everybody, and try to avoid having to lay down a bunch of rules by vote to do this. That's the summary. Fair enough? Okay. All right. We have 5 minutes to get to an NRECA regional meeting delegate and alternate. Can we do that in 5? Or should we just take a breath and go right into the attorney update? Jessica?
So I don't think it should take long. It's just who is planning on attending. I will be going. So if folks are not going, I'm happy to be a delegate or alternate. I've done that before in the past. But if anybody else is going and would like to do that, I just think we need to know who's going and then have the motion.
Is anybody going? Tim, go ahead.
Well, I guess it brings a question. I mean, I don't know that anyone would be planning to go unless they were a delegate. So it's kind of like cart before the horse, I think. But who did this last year?
I did it the year before.
I can hop in here. I think last year it was Kirsten and myself as the alternate. Unfortunately, I love to go to these because of being able to network and talk to other co-ops. This year, I'm not going to be able to go. It was virtual last year, so this year it looks like it's in person as well.
So the last in person was Jessica two years ago?
Yes, it was in Spokane, Washington. Yep.
Spokane.
And this year it's in Portland, Oregon.
I think I was there with you in Spokane, right?
You were, yes.
So is it 2 people that we send?
I think it depends on the board.
So Jessica's definitely going. If we make her the alternate, for example, then we can just have 1 person go. Otherwise, we can not make her the alternate and send 2.
I see. And is this a mandatory kind of thing? Would it be covered under that, or does it come out of the director's discretion?
It's not mandatory. It is a discretionary event. Is that right, Graham?
Thanks.
Yeah, I believe so.
So does anybody want to go? Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, I lost everybody's video. Is that just me or is everybody?
It's just you.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I would suggest we send a delegate other than Jessica. Jessica's going to go anyway as CEO. I think we should send a delegate. I think it's a great chance to meet from other states. Bob was our delegate in 2 years ago or whatever in Spokane. I went, I had Tri-State pay for mine to go. So there wasn't any expense out of LPEA. I think that's the case. I think it's a great chance to be there. Bob, as you remember, there was quite a bit of movement on some of the those things. They're not called reconciliation.
Resolutions.
Resolutions. Thank you, sir. And that was exciting as much as, you know, policy geeks can get into it. So I think it's good. I think somebody should go. I would like to have gone, but I'm not available during that period. So I think somebody, if you have any interest, and then I think it should be mandatory, because not mandatory. It's not a discretionary director expense. If you are being appointed by this board to be a delegate to a meeting, then it should be paid for, not under discretionary.
Yeah, I guess that was my confusion. I mean, we're not going to lose our NRECA membership if we don't attend this. That's what I was thinking. It's not mandatory. But if we appoint someone, then under our policy, you would receive per diem.
Ted, go ahead.
Should we maybe just let everybody stew on this for the next hour while we're doing executive session and whatnot, and then maybe someone comes up with the idea and he looks at their schedule and says, hey, maybe I want to go do this. And so that's my proposal, is we just kind of drop this and go through, stay on schedule and bring it back up.
Yep.
So that'd be a motion to lay on the table until after the executive session.
So
Good idea.
Sure.
And Janelle, can you send the board the dates for that, please? And the location?
I second Ted's motion.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
I am.
All opposed? All abstained? Okay. Whatever you call the table pushed.
Dates and venue are in the board packet, Jessica, just as an FYI.
Oh, thank you. Okay, perfect.
All right, let's get Matt in here. And you all have 1 hour to figure out whether or not you can go to Portland. Otherwise, I will draw randomly. And then you have to go to Portland.
Sorry, we're just trying to reach Matt. Uh-oh. He said he will be here in 2 minutes.
It's Wednesday, September 28th through Thursday, September 29th meeting. Attendance for the regional meeting is in person only. The business meeting will be Thursday.
There are also, in case anybody's interested, usually a couple of NRECA classes held during that time. So if you're needing to get a class, you can pick it up. We have to pay full price for it, but it's easy to get one. So if you're missing one.
And, you know, I'll be willing to go, but I don't want to stand in the way of somebody who is highly desirable, highly desiring it highly, I would say. So I'll throw that out there as I'll be a backup if you want.
And I can't go. I'll be out of town.
Yeah, I can't go.
I am also engaged for work with other events.
I'm looking at my calendar. I'd like to go, but I'm looking at my calendar and see what I could juggle around.
So we have one reluctant volunteer. Lukewarm, that's not fair. Lukewarm volunteer.
Reluctant, I would say willing, but not so much that if somebody has a high desire, then I want to stand in their way. That's all.
Excellent. And are we
Sorry, he should be on now. Okay, he said he's signing in. There he is.
Apologies, I'm late.
Hi, Matt. All right, you're
Hey.
up.
Great. Well, sorry for being late. Number one, I was trying to find a quiet spot here in Golden. I hope you're all doing well. Public update today is really short. We're still in a position where we're waiting for a FERC decision on the BDP case. That is, as it was last month, fully briefed, and we're awaiting a decision from the full commission. It is widely supported, our settlement and solution. We have a really good record for approval of that. We do have the United Power opposition to that settlement. So that's really the status on the BDP side. On the full buyout side, the CTP case, that is moving towards an ALJ decision from FERC next month. So late September, the judge will be issuing a decision in that case. And I think, at that point in time, we'll have a lot better sense as to how FERC is thinking about, what a full exit tariff should look like. And we'll have more to talk about at that time. But for the moment, it's pretty light. You guys have any questions for me?
Matt, this is Tim. So I mean, I don't know how the process is for the full commission to meet, consider something like, do they put an agenda out, certain regular meetings, and does it ever show up on that, or anything? Do you get any, or is it, I don't know, I'm just curious, like what that process is.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible they could kind of notationally vote it, and we could just get a decision one day that shows up, and I would be served with that as counsel for you all. Alternatively, they could put it on one of their open meeting agendas, which occur once a month, and have a discussion around it. It just sort of depends on how they want to advance it. So we really don't know at this time. I think there's not a specific timeline on that. I know that's challenging to kind of just be in a waiting position, but I think what we can feel good about is that we put on a really good case. We have a really well supported settlement, and we just need to hope that the regulators are comfortable with the settlement that we've reached.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of those two parallel paths, the BDP and CTP? Which is ahead of the other, or is there one's at the ALJ, the CTP, right?
Right.
So that has to be decided there before it comes back to the commission?
Yeah, that's correct. So, the BDP is well ahead of the CTP from a finality perspective.
Okay.
Because we've already been through the settlement judge process. That CTP case will, is in front of a judge. After it's in front of a judge, there's an exceptions opportunity in front of the full commission, then there's a full commission decision. And given how contentious that is, there's certainly the possibility of a appeal into the DC Circuit as well.
But on our BDP, that's a little further ahead, we're just waiting around for the day that gets on the agenda of FERC, and is it a meeting where they then hold a vote, or how does that, what's the process of that decision?
They can handle it one of two ways. So they can either vote it behind the scenes individually. They can't go talk to each other or anything like that. And we just get a written order that comes out that their respective staffs work on. Alternatively, they can agenda it and they can have a conversation about it. A lot of times the way that it works is, they'll agenda something and they'll have a conversation around it in their open meeting, and then an order will issue shortly thereafter because the order is already done. This is a settlement. It's not like a fully litigated case or anything like that. It's a recommendation from a settlement judge with a full report in terms of why, how the agreement was derived. So it may very well be the case that they don't put it on an agenda, but it's a lot farther along than the CTP. I can answer that question. For sure.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Matt.
And John, Jessica, I'd defer to you all whether we need executive session today. I'm happy to go into executive session if anybody has any more specific questions. Alternatively, we are kind of in a holding pattern here at the moment as we wait for it.
So I think the question is, if you have no proactive material updates, then is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I think then the second part of that would be, does anybody have any questions for Matt that they think need to be addressed only in executive session? And if so, we'll move into executive session, but absent that, then we won't.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think it would take long, but I don't know. I could also defer.
Just managing the meeting, entirely up to you, Tim.
I'll just defer at this point.
Okay. Okay, well, absent anybody's desire then I think we have no further questions for you, Matt.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
See you, Matt.
Thanks. Okay. Okay, we have 20 minutes before our scheduled lunch break. Do you guys want to resume the NRECA conversation or take an early break? I would vote that we carry on and try to get the NRECA question in the rearview mirror. You guys are okay with that? Okay. Okay, so we have one, let me try that again. Able-bodied volunteer, right? Willing to go to Portland. Does anybody else have a strong, have a desire to go to Portland for the NRECA regional meeting? Kohler, go ahead.
I'm just going to nominate Tim to be our representative to the NRECA regional meeting.
Great. We get a second?
I'll second.
John Lee, discussion, any comments on the matter? Sue, go ahead.
At the same time, do we want to designate Jessica as the alternate? We usually send a delegate and an alternate. So I would move
Yes.
the motion to have Tim as our delegate and Jessica as our alternate.
And I have no issues with that being the original motion.
Okay. Okay. Any additional discussion? Okay. Okay, so all in favor of Tim as the representative and Jessica as the alternate, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Okay. All right, well, you guys have fun in Portland. Bring back some cracked crab, whatever they do in Portland.
Beer.
Thank you, Tim.
Beer, pancake.
Yeah, that's really why I'm going.
There it is. There it is. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So let's do, let's crank through a couple of the reports if you guys are okay with that. Because I expect our executive session to be take a while. So as much as the reports as we can get through, the better. Attorney report.
Just refer everyone to my written report and take questions, except Rachel indicated she had one she believes is probably appropriate for executive session. So just note that and address that when we do convene an executive session.
I'm sorry, did I do this out of order? Should I
believe so?
No, you're fine, because we do need to go into executive session to talk about bigger issues, but cybersecurity. But no, I think you're right with the attorney report. And then if there is anything on his report that is sensitive, then we'll go to executive session for that.
Fair enough. Okay. So any questions for the public forum related to the attorney report? Okay.
Nobody wants to know how hardcore I am at the wheel spinning. I'm the iron.
Oh, Graham, I know. I was there.
Yeah, Rachel can attest to that.
He's fierce.
No softy when it comes to enforcing the fair wheel spinning rules.
Okay. Next up, roundup. Who's driving the roundup bus?
Kirsten, I think.
Kirsten.
She wrote the report.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, I had to switch computers because my last computer, everybody went blank. You all looked very good, by the way. Okay, so very basic roundup thing. We do have a couple of things we're discussing, like if we can ask our folks who are applying what maybe some of their policies are, especially around dealing with youth. We've got a subcommittee to talk about how we're going to deal with SEEK. And I gave a little bit up there about the Pagosa Outreach Connection, which is sort of the SEEK, the Archuleta County version of SEEK, and how we do that there. Out there, we rotate it through the three Roundup directors who are from Archuleta. Any questions on the Roundup report? Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Tri-State, Kohler.
Thank you. There is a report and there are two highlights that I'll talk about. One of them is the article in Forbes on Reg Rudolph. I noticed that my link in the report did not connect you over, but you can go ahead and Google Forbes.com and then Reg Rudolph and you'll get to the article. The more I talk to him and others about the program that he's doing, the more encouraged I am. I think it's really a powerful thing that we can use assets that we have without spending more money and make things more efficient, save money for the members as well. So that's a good article to take a look at. Last month it was asked that, okay, they're doing away with the rebates. I talked to both Dwayne and Reg. They are not doing away with the rebate program, but they are going to revise it. And basically what both of them told me is that they're looking at a return on their investment. If they don't have a good return, they might change it to something else. But if there is a good return on that, then they're still very strong on going forward with it. The other thing is if you do look at the financials, and they are in our drive, you'll see that the P&L for June was extremely ugly. Actually very depressing. And the biggest one is under expenses under other. And we had a $36 million write down on a AOE. So that's an ARO, asset retirement obligation. And that one was strictly for the ponds up at the New Horizon mine and how to deal with the water. So that was a big one. And we also went over the readjustments on the other AROs with the other other items that Tri-State has, most of them dealing with the ponds at their fossil fuel generation. And it is just stunning. It's pretty heartbreaking. Because they get up into the $150 million range. So on this one, the board is we wrote it all off in 1 month. We might revisit that and stretch it out, or we might just say, go with it just the way it is. Take the big bite and move forward. And that's the only two things that I would just stress out there. And you can look at the report. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'll do the best I can to answer them for you. It looks like Tim, you're up.
I think some people were ahead of me, so. I don't
Okay,
wanna take a-
I'm sorry, I can't tell the order
I think-
of it. So,
That's okay.
Joe, you're up.
okay.
Yeah, I was just reading, I was kind of surprised to see the report from the CEO where he says, I want to recognize United Power Chair Beth Martin, CEO Mark Gabriel. Is there some kind of thaw going on with United Power and Tri-State now?
Did you say fog or fall?
Thaw, sorry, thaw in relations. I was just surprised to see him complimenting anyone from United Power. So
Yes, there is a little bit. How far it goes, I don't know, because when you hear from Dwayne, it sounds pretty positive, but if you hear from Mark, it does not. And I think, Tri-State understands one of their biggest issues they got are their legal expenses. They want to try to get some of this stuff worked out, and they're trying their best to do it. If it works or not, I don't know. Beth is new to being the president of their board, so there might be a little progress there, but I think time will tell. At least they're sitting down. And I can tell you that Dwayne is very encouraged by just being able to sit down with them and have a conversation, because in the past that hasn't always been the case. And John, I'll have you call whoever's next. I can't tell.
Bob, go ahead.
Thanks, Kohler. I just wanted to have a little clarification on, you referred to the ARO, I think, or asset reduction amounts, significant amounts related to I think you said the ponds associated with the mines. Is that part correct?
It is not. An ARO is asset retirement obligation.
Okay.
So whenever you have like a coal mine or the ponds, the minute you start that, you have to figure out, okay, what is the cost to rehabilitate that at the end? And then that cost is put in each year as you move towards the end. What has happened is that some of the stuff has been moved up and retired much earlier than what the original plan was. That's getting revisited. The other thing too is the expenses to do this rehabilitation have just gone through the roof. So that's where the adjustments have come in.
Okay, so they were scheduled to be retired. It's happening a little faster and it's costing a little more. And so you're having to take a much bigger hit now than had been anticipated.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Okay. And how much further out there are those costs looming? How many years are on schedule remaining?
I don't know that I have the answer to that, but one of the big concerns that came up in the conversations is we need to push these up a little quicker, because if we have co-ops that do a partial buyout or a complete buyout, they're not going to be paying their part of this, because it's something that was created in the past, not in the future.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really an answer on how soon that comes up. So I can't really answer that, but I'll see if I can't get it better.
No, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Kohler.
Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, Bob, you asked and Kohler answered one of my questions, so thank you for that. The other one that I had was around the ESG reports, and I guess I did go find there was a PowerPoint presentation somewhere that was linked to this, and I assume there are other reports around this, and I'm curious, one, can they be made available, and how public are those, Kohler? Because I think I would like to share that with some folks.
Yeah, so the actual official ESG report, ESG, it should be on the website. You should be able to pull that right now. I do have a hard copy. I can leave that at the front desk at LPEA if somebody wants to grab a hold of that and take a look at it. If you want some hard copies to hand around, I'll ask Tri-State. I'm sure they can get me some or get some to Jessica and you can have it. That's wide open for the public.
All right, so I don't need a hard copy and it's on the Tri-State.
I don't think it's a MIC. I think it's on just the website.
Yeah, even if you Google Tri-State ESG, you'll find it, Tim.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that.
And this is a revised one.
Rachel, go ahead.
Awesome. Two questions to add on to what's already been asked. One was, it was just exciting on page 62 to see the 2 bullet points about the Inflation Reduction Act and its impact, potential impact, anticipated impact on rural electric cooperatives. And I don't know, I know that's fresh off the press, but will we get any briefings on the implications of the IRA down the road?
I sent out an email this morning that I forwarded from Dwayne, and that has some of that information. And I think, yes, as more comes available, it'll be sent out. There are some real positive things, but it also depends on how they go about implementing all this new stuff that came out. But I would look at that email today. That kind of gives you a good idea where they're starting from.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question, I know it was somewhere in the Tri-State documents. I think I was maybe like in a report on the Google Drive, but just with the Colorado River Compact, again, just a recent decision last night, and that's implications on things. How does that playing into all of this? Basically with big cuts coming for downstream rivers that impacts Lake Mead and power generation and all of that.
It has a pretty huge impact. For instance, right now, you aren't guaranteed your allocation as far as the generation. Also, the price that used to be kind of firm is no longer firm. They'll change it quite a bit more often. Availability is pretty slim. So I think everybody's kind of holding their breath on that and seeing what comes down the pipe. I really don't have any more to add to that. And we have what's called CREA, which is, if I remember right, it's a Colorado River Energy Distribution Association, and we have a member on that. And what they do is they work with WAPA on helping WAPA distribute power and how they price it and do that kind of stuff. And it's pretty bleak right now because there's not a lot of water reserves around. So we'll see.
Terrific. Thanks, Rachel. You good, Rachel? Okay, thanks. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, one more question. Kohler, I don't know if you can answer it or not, but it was interesting, the reference to Governor Polis and geothermal as a potential baseline power source. And I'm just curious, what level of discussions might have been going on at Tri-State around that as a 24/7 generation opportunity. I saw the thing about a nuclear power plant going in and Craig and so forth, but I have not seen anything around the geothermal aspect. And I think there's a lot of potential spots within Colorado, especially older oil and gas wells, especially in our area. Is there any discussion at Tri-State that's serious around this, or is this sort of pie in the sky future stuff or whatever?
This was the first many of us have heard anything about it for a long, long time. And the governor's calling it heat under my feet is what he's terming it. He's pretty well determined on it. He's driving forward with it, but there really is not conversations at Tri-State on it at this point.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you. I would encourage it personally.
I think I believe Dwayne will too. I think he was somewhat encouraged by speaking with the governor and getting an idea that there might be some backing to look forward to some of this. But it's brand new to us, and I think it's fairly new to everybody. So we'll see where it goes.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Kohler? Okay.
Thank
Then
you.
let's go ahead. Thanks, Kohler. Let's go ahead and take our lunch break now. We will see you all back at 12:30 sharp. We'll go right into executive session then.
Oh.
Thank you. See you in 31 minutes.
Before you leave, are we coming back to executive?
No, we would
session?
need to
I think
come
you'll
back to
No, we
public
come
session
here
and
for,
vote to go to executive session.
Okay.
yeah, so come back here, please. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, welcome back. So let's just coordinate this executive session. We had originally broken it up into two sections. Section 7, which said discuss legal counsel on litigation matters, then lunch break, then a cybersecurity update, then an employee matter. I think we're going to do all that in one shot. But then do we need what staff members do we need for what sections? I think Graham's going to be on all of them.
Yes.
And go ahead, please.
I'll need Drew on for the cyber. And then I believe Dan and Carl can, and everybody else from my team can head out. Is that right, Graham? Am I getting that right?
I think so. I mean, I don't know if you and Drew and Dan have a better grasp if Dan or even Carl has anything to add to the cybersecurity presentation, but I would suspect not.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so why don't we do cybersecurity first, and then all staff except for Graham can drop off.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Does that work, Graham?
yeah, that works. So, and then I
Okay.
guess when we make the motion, I guess we just want to note that I believe Rachel has some questions for me as well. So, so the motion would be to see confidential cybersecurity presentation to discuss an employee matter and to have some confidential questions based on my attorney report.
Terrific. Okay, John Lee, go ahead.
I move as the agenda states go into executive session for cybersecurity update, employee matter, and the clarification on the attorney's report.
Second.
Ted, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstained? Okay, see you on the other side. Thank you. Okay. Everybody back? Terrific. So we have a couple of items and then we still have a few more items to finish out the meeting. But coming out of executive session, we need a couple of motions. Who's brave enough? Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll first move to approve the at-risk bonus compensation that we discussed in executive session for the 21-22 calendar year for our chief executive.
Great. Can I get a second?
Second.
Tim Wheeler. All in favor, hands up. Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? Terrific. The motion carries. Okay, anybody want to do a second motion? Go on a roll, Bob.
I'll go ahead. Okay, I'll move to approve the compensation and at-risk bonus amounts that we discussed in executive session for our chief executive for the years this coming year 22-23.
We get a second.
I'll second.
Tim. Terrific. All in favor? Hands up.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Paul abstained. Okay, did you get the vote counts there?
I didn't, I'm sorry.
Did somebody get the vote count?
Yeah.
Kohler was a no. It was,
So-
it was 11 in favor,
11-1, okay.
11-1, no
With
abstentions.
Kohler.
Okay. Okay, there are no further actions coming out of executive session. We have two, we give you guys an option. We would resume with the fast track communications down in section 9 of our reports, and we can just plow through this, or we can take a 10-minute break. Anybody have a strong opinion either way? I hear roll forward. Move on. All right, fast track. You guys are up.
So briefly, the fast track annual meeting, the schedule is for October 12th. Don't have a venue at this point. I believe that Dennis Goldbrick, the fast track attorney, will get a hold of Graham to give him the details, and then we would need to vote for a delegate in September. That's October 12th. I think I mentioned that. So look for that, Graham, if you haven't seen it already, and it should be something we have on the agenda next month. I did note that one of the directors has resigned off that board, longstanding director, who had retired from her business and is also kind of pushing back a bit from a number of things in the community. And she, it was not a problem with her participation or with the board. It was her desire to step away from it. So we'll take up discussion at Fast Track September board meeting on any plans to fill that vacancy. There was, I mentioned that the Fast Track received a grant from the Colorado Broadband Office to provide fiber to the home into Ignacio. And it turned out that Colorado Broadband Office, after confirming that, after an appeal, then a week or so later came back and said, oh, well, actually another part of the Colorado Broadband Office approved that similar grant for the Southern Ute tribe to serve the same area. So there's I think still a discussion within the broadband office as to which one will actually get funded or how they will take care of this double funding that they approved. Seems like one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. In any event, I'll keep you posted on what happens with that as it gets resolved. And there was, I just realized I wrote a significant network outrage occurred, and it's supposed to be outage. Sorry about that. In my report. But there was a little bit of outrage because these are, there's these buildings where they regenerate the fiber signal. I don't know how many miles, every 50 miles or something like that. These huts are, they're called regeneration huts. And you can't get coffee or anything there. It's just for the fiber optic signal. But the, one of those, the air conditioners failed in Farmington and brought the network down. It's managed by Tri-State. It was noted that Tri-State doesn't have an automatic alarm system. Somebody has to actually look for that alarm, you know, periodically to see if it's gone off. It was Fast Track that has automatic alarms that then notified Tri-State. And then they finally got in there with some new portable air conditioners to fix it. It was during a very hot period in Farmington. It's, you know, I don't know Kohler, if you ever want to mention it to the appropriate person up at Tri-State, that that's not good for our cybersecurity down here. That would be helpful. I just bring that up because we depend on them for that. It was part of the contract and what we Fast Track pay for to Tri-State, and it didn't get followed through. So those are highlights. Anybody have any questions that you have of me? I'd be happy to try and answer them. Joe, you have a question, looks like.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned that the board of directors will be discussing how to replace zinc on the board. Just can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it's always been a little mystery to me how the board members are chosen for Fast Track.
Well, I hope it isn't a mystery. I think we've had this discussion before, so I guess I didn't do a good job of explaining that. But the Fast Track board fulfills its own board positions. There can, the bylaws call from 1 to, I think it's a dozen board members. And in the last 3 or 4 years, there have been 7 board members. That was what Fast Track board settled on. And one of those board seats is set and reserved for Empire Electric to appoint somebody. And then, of course, LPEA appoints someone, right? So there's 5, I would say, discretionary positions that the board of Fast Track itself identifies candidates and then votes to seat them on that. They could also vote to increase or reduce the number of board seats based upon that parameter of 1 to 12 in their bylaws. So the process, I've only gone through it once with Fast Track when Roger Z, who was the Economic Development Alliance director, took another job and then felt there was a conflict of interest. So we resigned from the board, and we went through a process of identifying skills, backgrounds, experiences, standing in a community that we felt would be useful for a fiber company within the community, identified, interviewed some candidates, and then made a recommendation, which the board voted upon. And I suspect that would, or expect that would be the same process going forward.
And I mean, would there be an invitation to the community? You know, we've got an open board seat, you know, like they do with other boards to say, or is it just you guys?
I wouldn't anticipate that it was just an open invitation. There's specific skill sets and background and that kind of thing that we would be looking for as a broadband company. It's not a public board. It's not like LPEA or a commission at the city or something like that. It's a privately held company, and the selection of the board members and that governance is is pertinent to the industry and to the business. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's the shareholder meeting. The 2 shareholders of Fast Track, Empire Electric Association and La Paz Electric, vote to approve the slate of board directors on the Fast Track board on a yearly basis. So, you know, we're the majority shareholder. I suspect that if we wanted to force changes on what that board characteristics and makeup look like, it could do so. But notwithstanding that, Empire Electric has a reserve board seat that we can't, under our incorporation rules, allow or override their selection. Right? Does that help? Does that answer the question? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Anyone else? All right. I guess that's it, John. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. CREA.
Great, thank you, Director Witchell. CREA did hold their managers joint board meeting down here in Durango the first part of August. And from my fairly limited perspective, it went off without a hitch. I would like to thank Director Skihan for showing up for the vast majority of it, including the town hall, and Director Compton as well. I had a lot of tremendous feedback from folks. They really liked being down in our neck of the woods. They made comments like, wow, we really know how hard it is to get here because most of the time I'm traveling to Denver or something like that. So now they have a greater appreciation for traveling that far. CEO Matlock shone like a diamond. I was told also by CEO Hannigan that was the best attended managers meeting that they've had in a long, long time. And he felt it, but he believed that it was because of all the fabulous and great things that are happening down in our neck of the woods in LPEA. So kudos to the staff. No, I can't. Sorry about that. Let me see here. The strategy session, generally the group felt that an adequate amount of budget and staff time was being spent on things like the educational offerings and the communications and the training. So overall, the group seemed satisfied with that budgeting and time. The resource adequacy question before the group was, should CREA staff pursue some preemptive legislation in regard to resource adequacy? At about the 11:30 hour last year, PSCO was trying to pass or present some legislation in regard to every utility providing power would have to file resource adequacy plans. And so that was alarming to the CREA staff for the fact that it would create, most distribution utilities don't have access to a lot of that information at their fingertips. So that never actually was presented, but it does look like it was going to be put up this year for the legislative session. And so after a lot of back and forth, it was kind of settled on. Apparently, when the legislative process goes on, you can present a bill, but it can be modified so heavily it doesn't resemble what you originally put on the table. And so they decided against trying to do something like that. There's a couple, this is such a hot topic right now that there's a lot of big groups that are working on it. And it was also mentioned that once the wholesale market or the RTOs come into place, that will really alter the discussion. And there's also a new group called the Western Resource Adequacy Program that is looking at resource adequacy as more of a regional response as well. So that basically is just more or less a wait and see the whole resource adequacy legislation proposals. The next day, the dinner was quite nice. We had it there at the hotel that night. The next day on Wednesday, it was just a regular scheduled board meeting. And I've got a lot of lightning here and thunder all of a sudden. Nothing really I wanted to bring out except there was a question. Director McWilliams had inquired about when the Innovation Summit was going to be held and what class offerings will be there. Those are at no charge to us. So if you need NRECA 2620 board operations and process, or 929 current governance issues and policy developments, those will be offered during the weekend of the Innovation Summit, and that starts on Saturday, the 5th of November. So it's about a month later than it normally is. Other than that, I didn't have anything else I really wanted to bring to your attention. Does anybody have any questions? All right, Sue.
Sue, go ahead.
Just a quick thank you on the dates in the courses. I appreciate that information.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
Director Scan.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Director Holly. I forgot your last name, Metzler, sorry. I want to add some stuff about what we learned at the town hall, but I'm going to use those slides. So if it's okay, I'll add that next month, specifically talking about directors' fiduciary responsibility.
Great, thank you. And thanks for coming to the town hall. We did have 4 LPEA staff. There was a couple from Empire. I think United Power, Jenny Busek came. And Scott, let's see, Yampa Valley. Rachel?
Yeah, I was curious what it means in your report, page 76, NRECA benefits is re-rated.
Let me find that. My vision's going to.
It's okay. You can just.
I am not finding that in my own report on page 76. Oh, re-rated. Oh, yeah. Okay. So NRECA provides the benefits package that CREA provides to its employees, and that simply means that they had to reprice it. Re-rate was the terminology that the CREA staff used. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other burning questions about CREA? Or observations? All right, I really appreciate you all, and I appreciate being part of this organization.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, you Western United.
Western United did not have a meeting this last month. It's next week, so that'll be forward for next month. And then as far as the livestock auction goes for the fair, that ended on Saturday and the report didn't make it in. It was successful, and I'll have the written report for you next month as well.
Terrific. All right, well, we will see you next month. And then tri-state rate.
Yeah, hey, John, that's the fish fry next month, or next week, so don't miss that. It's good.
Love a good fish fry.
So concerning the rate design committee, I got a request from Joe Lewandowski to maybe do a little bit more of a deep dive of this whole stuff, because it's a little hard. And I just sent a note to John and Jessica asking if I could get some time on the agenda in the next couple of months, because there are a lot of terms that I throw around, and I think it might be helpful to spend a little more time, and we're all kind of beat at the end of the day. I did want to highlight a couple of things. One, it seems to be an open secret that United is in discussions with Tri-State about maybe hanging around. So I'm just passing on this open non-secret that was discussed publicly over microphones that, I thought it was a secret, but it's not. Some people are more hopeful than others, and that's what you were saying, Kohler, about it. There was some, there's a lot of polling. Mostly it was about, do we do things the hard way, which I consider the right way, or do we do things the easy way? The problem with the easy way is FERC is going to blast it down, and folks aren't willing to accept that. The easy way is, well, just keep the A40 the way it is. We won't try to do base it on cost. We'll base it on overall cost. We'll meld it all together, and then we'll divvy it out. And the likelihood of FERC accepting that is very small, but folks would still like to do that. Although that's a smaller amount. As you look at the polling questions later on, you'll see that that is smaller. I do maintain that it's okay to have complexity in our rates, because we are going into a more complex world, not a less complex world. And just trying to make things simple for the sake of simplicity isn't going to cut it. When you look at your phone bill, even when we look at our own electric bill, okay, how much mine was time of use in time, out time? We are used to complexity, and we need to be able to handle it. Direct assignment is a big deal. That study is due, and that's direct assignment of transmission in standalone transmission if it's only serving one co-op. That study is due in February. That's from Tri-State Internal. Then we'll have to deal with that. And I think those are the highlights. Do take a look at that. Do take a look at the polling. Right now, 49% of the people say file with tilt. That's the second question. So tilt is that some of our demand gets covered in our energy price. And that's what FERC says, no, you will not tilt. So 46% of us are saying, hey, let's just do the FERC rate and not do the tilt. And that's probably what's going to get passed. So just a couple months ago, this was much more people saying, no, we should do the tilt. Let's, we need to be cooperative about this, but unrealistic about this. So I'm heartened to see that 46%. Because I think we're getting the right direction, and I think we'll continue to get there. And I believe those are the things I wanted to highlight. Any questions other than please tell me more details at a later time? Yes, caller.
Yeah, you mentioned that looking at the rate, things are getting more complex, and you felt that the complexity is okay. But in my way of thinking, and maybe you can correct me, a formulary rate would be pretty complex to start off with. But if you get to that, isn't it then simpler that point forward?
Yeah, Claude, but you can make a simple formulary rate too. So I consider the formulary discussion a separate discussion from how much do we really try to assign cost? And that's what's going to create the, do we do it seasonal? Do we have multiple peak periods? Do we do direct assignment of transmission assets and other assets that make sense? Either way, either a simple or a more complex one can be a formulary rate, and I think should be a formulary rate. And to your point, either one of those, once you know what those variables are, you should just be able to plug in the numbers on those.
So the things you mentioned, that would be just the complexity of doing the formulary rate, because that would still be a part of the formulary rate. Is that correct?
Well,
not in addition to?
Well, the fact that we may have the Eastern interconnect billed differently than the Western interconnect because they get their power from the SPP and we don't, and they have different things. That's a complexity. And when you look at the formulary rate, what it might say is this is based upon the purchase power agreement with Basin and with SPP. And if that changes, then the amount of the rate changes. The formulation doesn't change. And I maintain that whatever that formulation is, it needs to be as complex as it needs to be. So I guess maybe we're saying the same thing. I think the complexity is important. I think we can't get a formulary rate right if we try to do it too simplistically. There's no way.
Thank you. And thank you for carrying that weight. That's a big job. So thank you much.
Tim?
Yeah, Kirsten, thank you for providing all this information and data and being involved in this and stretching your brain for all of our benefit, and I appreciate it. I had a question. You've got this note about unbundling, and I'm not quite sure what you're referring to as unbundling. To me, I thought that there were, and maybe I'm confused on this, and so I'm asking, but the FERC had said, you have to charge the cost of transmission, not bundle it into the overall rate. Is this the same unbundling, or are we talking about a different one?
And that's a different thing. So FERC has definitely said thou shalt separate out your transmission rates and bill them separately. The other thing that we need to do is on the billing itself. So it will break out, this is what you're paying for this is what you're paying for that. So it's a transparency thing, and why anybody would vote against transparency, I have no idea. There is some concern that, well, maybe it'll be a little harder, but once you set up the system to do that, it will do it. So Dan, when he sees the bill, he'll see, okay, this is what you paid for this, and this is what you paid for OAT, and this is what you paid for non-OAT, and such as that, and that needs to be in there. and thank you for bringing that up, because one of the discussions items also is breaking out member services. Member services is right now under the
Demand rate. I
and
think.
the transmission demand, and there's thought to put it under the energy demand. For me, I think that's a good place for it, because when you consider a big piece of member services is Reg Rudolph's group, and that actually becomes an energy source if we can get DRs going. So I think it really belongs there, and this is where I disagree with Mark. I think if we go with Mark Gabriel, if we start going down a cafeteria plan and co-ops can say, oh, I want this and don't want that, and I don't want that. A lot of co-ops who really need it are going to say, I don't want Reg Rudolph's group and I'm not going to pay for it. And I think those are the kinds of things that do need to be socialized. And I'm afraid they may not be socialized. So to answer your question shortly, it's just an administrative thing that you see your bill more clearly. To answer the long one, I think member services should be a socialized cost.
That was a good explanation, but using the same term for two different definitions.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, that's the basic.
Yeah, that is correct.
So it just creates some confusion, maybe unbundled bills versus unbundled transmission or
Okay.
something.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. Rachel, your hand is up, but I don't think it's up.
You are correct.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. All right, that completes the agenda. We had one minor housekeeping issue. Well, I don't know, we have one last issue I think Jessica wanted to update us on before we close out.
Yeah, so tomorrow, Senator Hickenlooper is coming to Durango, and he specifically asked to meet with LPEA. So we're spending, Hillary's at about 3 or 4 hours with him. And we're doing it in coordination with the 9R school district and the city of Durango. But he wanted to ride the school bus. He wants to go over to some of our R&D facilities, meet with the folks that live at the mobile home park, go look at one of the installations. But they did ask for security reasons for a small group of people. So we could only invite a few folks. And so John Witchell will be joining us tomorrow to represent the board, but just want to make sure everybody knew that that was happening. And Hillary's team did a fantastic job with talking points and a little 2-pager. So we're happy to send that around because what the senator does is he comes out and then he asks, well, what do you want from me? What's your ask? And I used to be a Hill staffer, and I always appreciated when they just did my work for me. And so we tried to do that for the staff there. So put together kind of a 4-page document with a summary of the cool stuff we're doing and then the ask. So we'll send that around. So we're excited. Yeah. Hillary, do you want to say anything about that? Okay.
No, it should be
Ted, did
fun.
But might be absolutely too late, and I think maybe Tim would chime in on this with me. But you heard in Tim's report on Fast Track how Colorado Broadband Office really kind of dropped the ball on Fast Track on this grant, and it raised some serious concerns about a state organization that is going to be giving out a lot of state and federal money. And if there's any, that would be an ask from me, and I think it would be beneficial to not only Fast Track obviously, but our community and even LPEA. I think eventually LPEA will be relying on some of that funding for our build outs, and if it's not being run well, that's a bad thing. That could go very poorly. So, and I think a lot of people look the other way because they're getting money from this organization, but I think they should be held accountable, and I'm sure that Senator Hickenlooper knows the right people to call as long as we put the right ask in.
Yeah, Ted, do you mind shooting me over some talking points to that effect?
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ted, because I would have if you hadn't.
Yep. I mean, now's the opportunity. We're going to be with him for half a day, which doesn't.
I mean, he fought hard to get federal dollars to Colorado. And it looks like the agency that is assigned to disperse those in Colorado its right hand doesn't talk to its left. And it's created a problem in our area. So that's the basic message.
Okay.
And he was, he's probably the governor that set up the CBO, so maybe it's sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. Rachel, did you have a question?
I was just going to say the other one along similar lines, maybe to flag, because I think I'm trying to remember his committees, but I think he's involved in some way with FCC stuff and just the accountability to the FCC contracts they award. And just thinking about what's going on right now down here, not only with broadband, but also with cell service and how these massive companies have these contracts and are just dropping the ball. And it goes back to that mapping project that I know Tim had been advocating for, just to make sure we have accurate reads on data speeds and coverage.
Yep, will do. Great point. Okay, so we'll let everybody know how that goes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other last comments or thoughts? Okay, well, thank you all for your hard work today, and enjoy what's left of the summer, and we will see you in a month.
Okay. Adios.